We're live. I forgot to put the music on it again.
What?
Yeah,
You throw a little bit of new technology Leibowitz's way, and the
and it's
entire
all
the
fucked up.
entire ensemble just comes apart. Welcome to the Capitalist Corner, folks. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Mr. Michael Liebowitz, the boomer adjacent guy who's actually helming this channel, otherwise known as the Rational Alternative. Michael, you can at least tell us what the hell is going on in the channel, even though you can't get your shit together with the technology.
I got a great episode out right now, actually, the Michael Liebowitz show with Jim Valiant and Sheldon Richman. We discuss from an egoistic perspective why it's wrong to initiate force. Great,
Ooh.
great stuff. Great episode. Two very fine minds and me were on there, so I highly recommend it. Check it out. You really like it. Look, we're 56 people away, 56 subscribers away from 1,000. We can get this done, Mark.
Yeah, guys, Michael's trying to get 1,000 subscribers before his birthday, which is August 4th. So recruit people to become subscribers to this channel. If anything, just to make Michael happy on his birthday.
Yes,
But
make Michael
more
happy.
but more importantly, we think these ideas need to get out there in the world. And so we want them to spread. We want them to metastasize and take over the nonsense that we think is spreading out there in the world and replace it with something good. Also, remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Remember to go to americancapitalistparty.org and check out the policies, become a member. Also, do not forget the American Capitalist Party is having its first national convention September 19th and 20th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Please show up. Register, come out, and help us form our policies that we're going to take to state legislatures. We're streaming on Twitch. Please also give Michael some love.
We're on Spotify. Michael Liebowitz Show is on
Spotify.
Spotify. We need the super chats, super stickers. We might have an argument today. It's all going to be great.
We might have an argument today, but what else is new? So Michael, I think first up on the agenda here is Mr. Fauci. You got a little defensive. You got your hackles up when I said I hate Fauci, and you're like, "Why?"
No. Don't put words in my mouth.
Well, I said I hate Fauci, and you were like,
and I
"Why?"
asked you why.
Because no, you went why? Because he took the fifth, and I said no. And I said because he clearly was basking in the limelight of his newfound fame, and you were like, really? So I want you to tell me what I missed in the diary releases.
This is what I want you to do first before we do anything. You read the same stuff I did today. Although I don't know if you actually tuned into his testimony, but you watched the same stuff that I did. So I would like for you to give your assessment based on everything that you read today.
Well, I'd have to actually look at it again to actually point through, but I can tell you the impressions that I got with respect to what you sent me. Yeah. So, and the impressions may not be accurate, and you're making me second guess myself because it is early in the morning and I have had no sleep. So it's quite possible that I inserted my own feelings upon the thing. And I'm only saying this now because you're making me doubt myself. But so Rand Paul released. Did he release all of the diaries, or did he just release segments of the diaries?
I'm not really sure.
But there's over 1,000 pages that cover a few years of Fauci's tenure with the organization that he was head of. He's basically the face of the pandemic and the face of the government response to the pandemic. And it appears to me that during this time, of course, he became a very controversial figure, much maligned on the right, but embraced by the left, and many celebrities on the left who came to his defense and also personally praised him. And of course, this is a heady thing for somebody. When Julia Roberts and Barbara Streisand step into your DMs and start telling you you're awesome, you're amazing, you're a hero, and you start having relationships with politicians, like A-list politicians who are always out there in the headlines, making news. It can be a heady thing for somebody to be thrust into the public attention like this. And it's a little bit of it's a difficult cope. Let's just put it that way. And it seemed like it seemed like overall he had mixed feelings about it. He was certainly enamored of it. He was certainly intoxicated by the fact that he was the new hero and the voice of science, for this horrible period we call the corona epidemic. But he also tried to tell himself that it didn't matter and he really had to focus on business because it really wasn't that important. But Michael, I think he was enamored of it. That's just me. Go ahead. Put me down.
I don't want to put you on. First, I want to state my position and what my position has been for quite some time. First of all, I was opposed to lockdowns from the beginning. I'd be opposed to school closing, certainly opposed to government mandated vaccines. I thought from the beginning that, there was far too much focus on the health problems, as the health risks of COVID, but that's the only side of the ledger they looked at. They didn't look at what happens when you lock down. What are the collateral side effects, the economic effects, the erosion of trust? They didn't look at any of that, right? So that's my take as far as that goes. I also think COVID-19 was a real illness.
Yes.
I know that I've had it and it was hell.
I've had it 5 times, Michael, and I've had 5 vaccinations.
Yes. So, so that said, when Fauci admitted, and I think I said this yesterday, that he had lied and said that masks wouldn't help, and he did so to prevent people from buying them, I said right there, okay, this is not somebody that I can trust. So I don't like the guy. He's not somebody that I need to stick up for. But I'm also well aware, and the reason I asked why, first I thought it was because he took the fifth that you were pissed, right? So I wondered how much of your aggravation toward him stemmed from what you read in his diary, as opposed to the commentary about.
Well, I think the snippets that I saw of his diary were disturbing to me, but they were understandable, given his position and given his sudden being thrust onto the stage. It can be disconcerting and discombobulating to somebody, and it's also intoxicating because people are coming to you. They have an orientation to you that you're not used to.
Okay, so this I can say, Mark, with absolute certainty.
Yes.
Rand Paul's take on what he's commenting on is not an accurate reflection of what actually occurred. So, for instance, when they talk about 10 out of 12 scientists, Rand Paul makes it sound as if in Fauci's notes, he said 10 out of 12 scientists think that this came from a lab. But that's not really what's going on.
So now we're on to it's a slightly different topic now. But
no, we're going to get into all of it. But I'm giving you an example about Rand Paul, right? They're not saying, these folks, yes, it came from a lab. They're giving more or less probability of it.
Sure.
Right? In their discussions. That's what Fauci's talking about. Rand Paul today on the Senate floor said something that I think is every bit as dangerous as anything Fauci has ever said. He said, we need to make sure that a man-made virus never again is, unleashed or some such thing. Okay. Intelligence agencies have found, at least the last that I saw, if anybody has new information, then, let me know, with a low degree of probability or a low degree of confidence that it came from a lab, intelligence agencies. The majority of scientists, upwards of 80% of virologists, epidemiologists that comment on it, have said it likely came from natural causes, from natural transmission. Okay, so for Rand Paul then to, on the United States Senate, on the floor there, to make it seem as if it's absolutely certain that it came from a lab is just as dishonest and just as bad as Fauci, right? Jim is right. Fauci has said in public before that he was not responsible for locking down schools, I believe. I don't know if he ever said he wasn't responsible for broader lockdowns, but he said for school closings. And in his diary, in his writings, he said that, he convinced, I want to say de Blasio, to close
and also
schools.
Newsom.
I could be wrong.
Also Newsom.
Okay. But the first thing that I really want to talk about is this fame thing. Because I read the same. Go ahead.
So here's what I think. You could tell me if my remembrance of these events is not accurate. What they should have done was publicly claim their uncertainty. In other words,
Yes.
which they did not do, which they pressured people into saying a particular narrative when the scientific community had maybe a 12 to 30% doubt. Now, whether that's just scientific openness to the possibility of something or not is irrelevant. The public needed to know that the scientific community was in doubt as well.
Right.
And,
See,
he was responsible for manipulating that narrative.
Right. What I've left out of my viewpoint for years now is that, and I wanted to say it, I just forgot, was basically what you just said. They expressed far more certainty in public than was warranted, than they actually had. I think they should have just told the truth. Now, the thing is, I get it. Right. I get why they don't want to come out and say, when they're very confident that this thing came from natural sources, why they don't want to come out and say with a 30% possibility, that it came, from a lab. Some of us think it's about 10%. I get why they don't want to do that, but I don't think that that's their place in an open society to think that they're going to protect the people. By the way, Donald Trump did the same thing. This is the type of thing that drives me crazy. Trump did the same thing, and he admitted it to, what's his name there? Bob Woodward, right? Woodward and Bernstein. Yeah, Bob Woodward, that he lied about the seriousness of the virus. He said, yeah, I said it wasn't that serious because I didn't want to get people alarmed. But his people don't hold him accountable. Right. So, it's similar with Fauci taking the fifth. I see all kinds of comments. Oh, he's a bitch. Obviously something to hide. When Hillary takes the fifth, or rather Hillary's people took the fifth, Trump says, oh, they're obviously guilty. Trump takes the fifth and they say, oh, it's because it's a witch hunt. Fauci takes the fifth and it's
certainly we have tribal interests here asserting themselves, and they're not. Nobody's being honest. And that's part of the problem here, Michael. We have politicized science here. The virology, epidemiology, aspects of that are controlled by government means they have a vested interest in carrying the government narrative. Let me just say this real quick. So the 80%, 80% in agreement that it's for example, just it came from natural origins and not from engineered from the Wuhan lab. I'm suspicious of that because we have a political entity now that has to carry a narrative. Now, I compare it, Michael, to the vast majority of scientists who were on board with global warming and the imminent disaster that global warming would bestow upon the world. And this inspired the fiasco of the Green New Deal and the whole renewable energy thing. Yeah. And now they're all going back on it, Michael.
I would suggest revisiting Alex Epstein's book, Fossil Futures, because he says that it's actually not the case that the overwhelming majority is scientists.
That's right. But they stayed quiet and they were pushed out of the narrative. Those who disagreed were pushed out of the narrative, and and particularly the left politically were pushing a narrative, and the narrative it quite naturally pushed all competing ideas out of the marketplace.
Okay, but see, you're kind of taking me in a direction I don't want to go. I'm not a climatologist. I don't know much about climate. I don't want to go get ahead of my skis.
But I'm making a comparison that a politicized science is going to be distrusted.
I think this is true, Mark. But I also think that you're going above and beyond your own knowledge base when you make the claim that you just did about how they're all going back on their statements. Now, if you can show me all these scientists that once said there was global warming and now went back on it, that's different.
Well, I can tell you certain iconic political figures and cultural figures who are going back.
That's not the same thing.
And going back. All right.
But that's not the same thing.
I know it's not the same thing.
That's not the same thing. So Fauci, I like numbers. Scott Schiff, he says Fauci's people won't hold him accountable. Fair. And that might actually hold weight if it wasn't coming from somebody who every single time Trump is criticized says, what about the left? Right? You have no place to criticize people for not holding their folks accountable when you won't hold yours accountable.
Yeah, and
I will hold everybody accountable, including myself, by the way.
Yeah, and let's not forget, I like numbers. Trump is responsible for the lockdowns too.
Right. He supported
it
them
over to
initially.
Fauci, as James Valiant says. He
Right.
supported them. He started, Michael, flooding the market with currency. He was the one who started this with the PPP programs. He started paying people for the lockdowns. He blames the Democrats for the inflation. He's part of it.
Right. Okay. Now I want to get into the fame thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to say, case in point, Scott Schiff right away goes to the defense of Trump. He got bad advice. Yes, it's always bad advice. It's always his cabinet. It's always the doctors. It's always somebody else. Scott, if you don't understand why people don't take you seriously, I don't know. You just got done criticizing Fauci's people for not holding him accountable and then immediately jumped to a defense of Trump, which is what you've always done in the 3 years I've known you. Anything criticism of Trump, you go to defend him. Okay.
And he did get bad advice, Michael, but the buck stops with him. He's the one who ultimately makes the decisions. And he made a decision to shut down the entire economy. Stupid.
Right. Okay. Now, the idea with the stuck on fame or basking in fame, I read all the things that everybody else did. Well, I didn't read the entire thing. I shouldn't say that. But I read the highlighted stuff.
Right.
About my fame is blown up unimaginably, all that, right? And the take that I got from it.
Which is true.
Yeah, but he's just writing it down. Yeah, there's no indication from that. But look, this is what's occurring. People are assessing his emotional reactions to that based on him writing it down. He doesn't say this is wonderful. He doesn't say this is great. He's just saying what is occurring, which, by the way, was true. Then there's this. Let me bring this up here. Open. Okay. This is too small. I can't read it. So I'm going to have to just read it on my phone. But I'll leave it up there for anybody that actually can read it. I'm a little far away and my eyes are bad. In a May 2020 entry, Fauci wrote, "The situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable. The most famous," he says that he may be the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable people in the world. "Press still hot and heavy about me. Multiple stories per day, directly or indirectly, involving me. Invited to appear on Dancing with the Stars. No thanks." He also talks about they're trying to create bottle openers, magnets, and mugs, as well as prayer candles depicting St. Fauci. All that's true. Then he says the swag around me is getting really ridiculous. Geez, I do not like this one bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. I would like for somebody to present to me evidence that contradicts his direct statement to himself now. Remember, he's writing this to himself. He doesn't know years later this stuff's going to get subpoenaed and posted all over the internet. And he says, I don't like it one bit. But the fact that he's saying that he is the most famous person right now, people jump in and say, oh, look, he's drunk on his old fame. He's doing this so he can attain fame and power. Okay, look, he's a bureaucrat. I know he lies. I have no problem with making a case against him. But if you're going to make a case, exaggerating the case does not help. Ever.
Was there a point at which, Michael, he said, I am science?
I have not seen that he said that.
Can somebody...
I'll Google it. You just keep talking.
Because that would be evidence of a guy whose reputation is getting to his head. Now, Michael, and I said this earlier, it was clear from his diary entries, which he did not suspect to be subpoenaed, by the way. So he expected these things to be private. He could have said anything because he never thought they would be public. What you see is a guy struggling with the insanity that fame and celebrity can bring, and clearly not liking many of the effects of it, which is not just the positive, Michael, but the incredible, terrible side effects of death threats and people personally hating you
Yeah. So Fauci never said I am science. What
I
he
represent
said
science.
but no, because you have to understand that what the context matters immensely. He says it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. That's dangerous. What he's talking about is the arguments that he's making are scientific arguments. This is what science, the science that they're studying is saying, and that he's just representing it, putting it out there. He's not saying I am science.
Okay, good. So you're saying the context, it tamps it down a little bit. Doesn't seem
Right.
like a.
And again, like, I don't want to be in this position. Like, I'm trying to defend Fauci because I'm not. I don't think this guy's a great guy.
No, he's a douche.
I think he's a bureaucrat who's worked in the government for a very long time. But for instance, he talks about, he's previously testified, for instance, that the NIH did not fund gain of function research. Somebody from Reason Magazine, which, I like normally, but I think Billy, I don't want to say it because I might be wrong on who it is, but he quotes Fauci in his notes saying gain of function is taking place in Wuhan. Right?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, that looks like a smoking gun to me. He previously said they didn't fund it. He didn't say they fund it here either. He said it's happening. To say something's happening and say you're funding that thing happening are not the equivalent. And all I'm saying is when people make claims like that.
Yeah, you got to show the receipts. You got to show the receipts. Yeah. And they're not showing the receipts. So what a complex thing, Michael. And oh, buddy. And it seems to me that it's the politicization. Why can't I say that word? It's of science. That's what creates these tribal wars over simple facts, Michael. I think, would you, as a capitalist, if you were president, work at disbanding organizations like the Center for Disease Control or the National Institutes of Health? Come on, buddy. Come on.
If I were president, if I were the god of policy, there would be no National Institutes of Health. There would have never been a Dr. Fauci involved. None of that would occur. None of it. I certainly wouldn't have supported lockdowns or, anything of that nature. No way.
Yeah, lockdowns, universal lockdowns, Michael, were absurd. They were just absurd, and we're still feeling the economic reverberations of them today. Do you want to talk any more about this guy? I mean, does he merit any more conversation? He was saying his critics now James is saying he was saying his critics are not science. So he was that the context was that he was claiming anybody who criticizes him doesn't stand for science, but he does. So he's the truth, they're the liars. That's more tribalistic.
But hold on, you're reading stuff in there this is going to make me lose my mind now.
No, I'm talking about Jim's comment. He's saying he was saying the critics are not science. Is that true?
Look, I just read you the exact quote. It's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. That's dangerous. Unfortunately, the article is in Politico, and I think Politico has a no, they don't. They have a paywall, yeah.
Ian Gilmore says the problem is that the mainstream criticism of what happened under COVID are bad on both the right and left. I mean, that's true.
I agree 100%. I don't know, call me crazy, but when I criticize somebody or when I arrive to a degree of certainty, I like it to be based on reality. To read into Fauci's mind based on those quotes that he somehow was basking in fame and drunk on fame, it just doesn't warrant a conclusion. I mean, look, Mark, you saw what I sent you this morning, right? Numerous articles. I literally told the AI, make the best case for Fauci being drunk on fame, make the best case against it. Tell me what's the best, most logical conclusion. I put forward, Rand Paul's article and said, assess for logic and accuracy. It said it was pure BS. It said, the factual claims, it said the base facts were accurate, but it said the conclusions that he's drawing are unwarranted. He did not claim to be the guardian or representative of science, Jim. That's just not true.
Ian Gilmore says Fauci is saying they are using criticisms of him to criticize science. So that's actually, that's actually
he's not saying. But yeah, he's not saying he's the guardian of science, right, or he's the representative
they're
of science.
Personally attacking him as an avatar for science and trying to impugn science through attacking him personally, which is a very different statement than I am science or
he's not claiming that he's the representative or guardian of science. Mark, if you were to talk to somebody about the law of supply and demand, right, and somebody wanted to criticize you for it, and you said, look, I'm just bringing forth the science. That's it.
Yeah.
Are you, or I'm just representing the science. Are you claiming that you're the guardian of science at that point? Or are you making a statement that you're just putting out there scientific conclusions? That's it.
Yeah, I would just be, the mouthpiece for, grounded economic science, basically. Hey, Greg says Fauci behaved exactly as should be expected. The only fix is to delete his employer. Agreed, right? Take out those alphabet soup agencies.
Jim says, I sure felt alone when publicly complaining about the 2 weeks to flatten the curve during those 2 weeks. Jim, had I been out, I would have been right there with you.
Indeed, it was horrible, a horrible time to live through, and a litmus test, I think, Michael, for any authoritarian types who have designs in the future on restraining the American population. It's crazy how willingly so many of us just hunkered down into in our homes and lived in fear of the other, right? Because the other could transmit this disease.
I just, before we move on, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the context. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, on Sunday said Senator Ted Cruz's calls to prosecute him smacked of bias against science. Anybody who's this is a quote, anybody who's looking at this carefully realizes there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. If they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, people could recognize there's a person there. So that's what he's talking about. It's
sort of a scapegoat.
It's a direct repudiation to Ted Cruz, who, by the way, I would argue is anti-science.
Well, now there's definitely a strong contingent within the Republican Party, Michael, who have become anti-vaccination. Because of this whole crazy debacle of COVID. And, vaccines are proven to be lifesavers. So the fact that now there's a whole group of people that won't vaccinate their kids because of myths that are running around is frightening. But I once again, I attribute this distrust to the politicization of science, because now people think that these organizations are going to be trumpeting a narrative. They're going to be trumpeting the narrative of the political party in power at the expense of the competing political ideas. And nobody's going to think that there's such a thing as objective truth, objective science, reality that any of these organizations are trying to reflect. So it's very scary that science has been in the political world.
We have a question here. From Scott. He says, can anyone go after a corrupt scientist without being an attack on science? Of course. And you know what? Fauci might have actually been wrong. He might have been deflecting. The question we're addressing is whether he actually claimed that he was the guardian of science, or somehow he is science.
Can you go after a corrupt scientist without what? Anyone go after
without it being an attack on science? Yes,
of course.
The thing is, and this is why we end up having to ignore him, is because Scott is the king of the straw man. He just brings up things that have nothing to do with anything. Jim says, I do not recall defenses of mysticism in this context. I do recall scientists making scientific arguments. That's fine, Jim. But to drop the complete context of who Ted Cruz is and what his belief system is as he's criticizing somebody, knowing that Ted Cruz is this evangelical Christian, for instance, knowing that Ted Cruz is a politician who's literally, no, figuratively sold his soul to Donald Trump, that he's somebody that will say virtually whatever it takes to get elected. That's the context, and we can't just throw that out the window. But this takes us right into our next subject here.
Go ahead. Americans are losing trust in their institutions. Oh, this is true, Michael. You want to talk a little bit about this?
Hold on here. I want to see this. I want to make sure. Super chats and super stickers, by the way, folks. And anybody joining us from X, by the way, we would absolutely love it if you would go to our YouTube channel, The Rational Alternative, subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 within a week. We're at 944. I think we can do it. I know we can do it, but we need your help. Go over there. We've got great programming. This is our flagship show every day, noon to 1 Eastern time. We've also got interviews on the Michael Liebowitz show. We've got weekend programming. It's all wonderful. And Gary Menard makes a joke about RFK and the anti-science crowd. So, yeah, there's not an article, but a brief sort of blurb about Americans' trust in the Supreme Court is at an all-time low. It's gone way, way down. And it makes me think like, okay, we've lost trust in Congress. We lost trust in the executive. The Supreme Court's down. As you've said, science, people now aren't trusting, because it's all, to me, Mark, it can all basically come to the same thing, right? It's everything has become politicized.
Yep.
Now, it's possible this was always the case, and maybe we just didn't notice, or maybe I just didn't notice, but everything is politicized. And when I say everything, I mean everything, right? Look, Cracker Barrel, they want to change their logo. That's political. Taylor Swift and her boyfriend.
What happened? What happened with him?
No, they just or her husband now, or whatever. I don't know. Everybody was upset with them on the right. They demonized them and hated them. I don't know. Really? It's crazy to me. Yeah, absolutely. See, so Jim
the
Valiant,
right was in love with her.
First, I want to thank Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
$1.99 super sticker.
The right was in love with her for a while because she embraced a guy like Kelsey, who's a man's man, right? He plays for Kansas City, and he's a big football player. And they thought, look at her, she's a woke lefty, but when push comes to shove, she embraces the Cro-Magnon man, the ideal, I guess, the ideal brute that the new conservative movement embraces now, just because he's a big dude. It was like a win for them, so I can't believe they're against her now.
Yeah, Kira Felix says the difference is that stuff is culture war crap. Fauci is in politics. Yes, but science should not be politicized, and that's Mark's point. That probably wouldn't occur if you didn't have scientists working for the federal government in this type of case. That's the problem.
And getting grants, folks. You cannot underestimate the power to tilt your perspective if a grant lies at the very end of it, or if denial of grants lie at the very end of it. If your scientific career depends upon whether you're towing a particular narrative or not, it takes an extreme amount of integrity to go against the grain and forego a living, and knowing that you're going to be flying in the face of what the government wants you to say. Look, education should be out of the government's realm. That's the last thing you want is government controlling the minds of our young, and certainly science, which is supposed to be about facts, should not be in the political realm. It should not be subject to the political realm. It's got to be out, gone. And Michael, some of our opponents would say, well, they fund a lot of research, and some of that research really helps people. I think it would be far better for private funding. Even though the government has the power through taxation to have almost endless resources and to throw it against everything, they can fund just a ton of projects, 90% of them which will be failures, 10% which wouldn't. The private sector will be a little bit more circumspect for sure and fund what they think would be successful and useful.
I agree. It's a shame. It's a real shame that but look, the institutions in this country have earned it.
Yep, they certainly have.
They've earned the lack of trust. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, Michael, now whenever we're discussing something like this, it's almost impossible to get to the truth.
Yeah. A young man I met recently, I met him at Gene Epstein's party about a month ago, a little more than a month ago. And I wanted to have this kid on the podcast right away. And he actually sent me his information, but for some reason it didn't come through. It finally came through. I'm going to be interviewing him tomorrow. The episode will be out in a couple of weeks. This kid, I think, is 11, maybe 13. He goes up to Brian Kaplan, the economist, and starts talking to him. I really like your formulas on this and that. This kid was brilliant.
Damn.
And I want to interview this kid. Really, really smart kid. Can't wait to interview him.
Mara Ribbon says, Matt Ridley points out that government funding of science has no effect on how quickly knowledge is advanced. That's fantastic. I love Matt Ridley. He's great. And fun fact, Amazon and Google offer private grants for research and development in the same way. This is true. And correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Amazon releasing billions of sterile mosquitoes into the world to try to reduce the spread of malaria? Because these I think they have a particular gene in them that when they mate with the female, it produces sterile eggs. So eventually this particular strain of mosquitoes that is I guess most responsible for transmitting diseases, it ends up becoming extinct because they just breed sterile. That's Google. Google's doing that. Michael, that's amazing. I mean, that an organization like Google that creates a search engine for us on the internet can now create a technology that can wipe out an illness that kills millions of people every year. That's amazing. That's amazing. And a testament to how these great companies and guys like Elon Musk, the trillionaire that everybody's attacking, he's trying to create chips and Neuralink projects that can help people who have suffer from their paraplegics and quadriplegics, is helping them communicate, helping them walk.
I hate that you bring him up. I really do. I do. I hate that you defend this guy.
I'm not defending him.
But you do sometimes.
I'm putting him in the perspective of a bunch of very wealthy entrepreneurs who are extending their reach into other areas privately and making great advancements in those areas.
That's fine. He's also a lying scumbag who's gone to the government trough to fund his projects.
That's true.
I just to bring him up. I don't care for him, and I don't think he's a good representative of billionaires, trillionaires, or anything else.
Copy that. Okay, so yeah, folks, we have a distrust of institutions. There's a reason for that, because everything's political, and the institutions are going to be touting a political line, and you can't trust that. So you have to go to places like this and to podcasts like ours to get a truthful sense of what's going on out there. Because in our arguments, Michael, people are going to find the truth. They're going to find the truth because they can compare and contrast and decide for themselves. What does that say?
This is sometimes the audience, you guys just drive me nuts. Totally nuts. Akira says it's not like leftists hate Elon Musk for that, Michael. They love politicians and dictators. Yeah,
that's true.
I know. It also has nothing to do with what I said. My point is, if we're going to be defending people, it ought not be Elon Musk. Let them criticize him all they want. Point out that what they're criticizing is not actually somebody who's a capitalist entrepreneur, but a lying maggot who runs to the government for money.
Hey, by the way, I did not drink the Elon Musk Kool-Aid. There's comments going on there that I've drinking the Elon Musk Kool-Aid. I understand he's a really intense mixed bag of tricks, and there's a lot about him I don't like, but there are some things about him I do.
Yeah, and Scott Schiff, of course, runs the defense of Elon Musk. So again, Scott, you earlier said that Fauci's people won't hold him accountable. When have you ever held anybody on your side accountable? Ever?
Yeah, Scott. And Greg Dougherty says that, look, Musk is a complex mix of grifter, scammer, and producer. And that's true. He is. That's true. But Michael, I just like the fact that some of these billionaire entrepreneurs are turning their great minds and productive capacity towards science and towards human thriving. And that's great. That's what we need. We don't need the NIH. We don't need the CDC. We don't need the Food and Drug Administration. We don't need any of these alphabet soup agencies restraining progress, restraining great minds and great innovation. We need them gone, and we need to let the reins off of the minds of the creators.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, dude. Just like I said, Elon Musk is not the guy. I mean, KR says, in his defense, in current political climate, it's hard to do business without government connections. All right. Why does that mean he has to get on X and spread pure bullshit all the time? Why did he accuse Donald Trump of being a pedophile and then make up with him? Either you were lying about the guy being a pedophile, which is disgusting, or you're okay with him being a pedophile, which is disgusting.
Yeah, I think he might be okay with Trump being a pedophile.
I don't know what
so long
is.
as they can be temporary allies and whatever it is that Elon Musk is trying to accomplish. Speaking of weird, authoritarian, amoral type people, why don't we move on to the mayor of New York, Mamdani? And he's just come. Did I jump the gun?
No, you're perfect. I just hate that guy too. A lot of people are getting me steamed. I'm getting kind of steamed.
You know what? Steamed. You know what I hate about this guy, Michael, more than anything? His ideas are awful, but he says them with a smile. And the smile looks so genuine. It's like he's like the man who laughs. He's like that villain. He's so gross. With that beneficent way that he has about him. He's a master politician. I have to say he's one of the best politicians I've seen out there. He's extremely articulate and manipulative. He's a lying sack of ass, but you have to sort of know where you are and what the facts are in order to really combat this guy. Because he'll go on a show like Jon Stewart and say, hey man, socialism is just libraries. Are you against libraries? It's just about helping people. Are you against helping people? As if government run stores, and I think he wants to put 5 of them up. Is that, Michael, situated around various boroughs in New York, with the claim, Michael, that they won't put local bodegas out of business, and they certainly won't be competition against private run grocery stores. Now, these stores, of course, they will be run privately, but they will have a mandate to bring prices of certain staple goods like meats and vegetables 30% below what retail prices are. That's not going to be competitive at all, Michael. Not only that, there's no means testing for anybody who's going to go in there. So I can anticipate anybody, including the rich, especially the rich who know a bargain when they see one, running in there, getting their assistants and PAs to be the first in line to snatch up multiples of a particular item until that shelf is empty. Yeah, so I'm anticipating some interesting shortages here, Michael, and the excuse that he used that he won't put local bodegas out of business is because what they really sell, Michael, is cigarettes and hot food. Forget that also a big part of their ordinances and their supply is also groceries and gum and other coffee and other things that people buy. He's not going to put them out of business for that. This is going to be a fucking disaster.
Well, it is, but there's actually something that you touched on where he made this comment about libraries, right? And I think that people on our side have to answer for this as well, right? Because when you start calling everybody you disagree with that's on the left a socialist, that opens the door for him to be able to say, well, we have public libraries, right? As if that's what he's advocating. As if that's,
he didn't just advocate that. What's so funny is that his platform when he was running was he wants to take away private property. He wants to make housing public, all of it. I mean, he said that kind of stuff, Michael. So he made no bones about, wanting to turn over the means of production and even ownership to the government. He made no bones about that. So for him to
Right.
pull back now, it's just that what he understands is that the Democratic Socialists of America, their platform is horrible. It's way over the top. They want to eliminate the police department. They want to eliminate the Supreme Court. There's so many. They want to remake the entire system of a representative republic into their own image. And he understands that in order for these candidates that he's endorsed to win an actual full election, as opposed to the primary where people are coming out in protest of the Democratic Party, they have to bring themselves right back to the center. They have to seem like they're normal. And so now he's trying to embrace a quote unquote more acceptable brand of socialism.
Yeah, and people don't call him out. Jon Stewart had him on and was, really joking around with him and, just having a great time, not really pressing him. But what you just said about going to the middle, because there was actually an article in Jacobin, and Mark, I think, read part of it actually, and the leftists over at the Jacobin, the socialists, are kind of pissed at the Democrats because they're saying that the Democrats blamed them for all the woke crap that the Democrats got in. But these socialists say, look, Bernie Sanders wasn't a woke guy, really. He's talking about bread and butter issues. Now, the Democrats wanted to blame us, but now that the leftists are winning elections, now the Democrats are running back to the left. But look, they're politicians, man. I mean, not the people at Jacobin, but Democratic politicians, Republican politicians. Again, these people don't give a shit about people, right? They just don't. Like the idea that they're out there fighting for you and all, it's all BS. It's garbage.
Yeah, it's just they just say it so they can get elected. They want to rabble rouse and they want to agitate a constituency that they can promise shit to and then get elected and then use the levers of power to pay back that constituency. We're in a spoil system democracy now, folks, where the people who are candidates for government appeal to you by telling you they're going to get you shit. And then they get in there and they work on getting you shit so that they can keep getting elected. And the cycle just continues. Because, Michael, then when they start getting you stuff, it creates a kind of dependency. Now you are there. Now you're theirs. So it's not like they're trying to make you independent human beings who can function on your own. They're trying to. They're like a drug dealer that's trying to induce a kind of dependency on you, so they keep you as a regular freaking customer. It's the most cynical and disgusting profession on the planet, especially now, Michael. I don't think it's ever been great. Certainly, it was better during the founding, but there were some real shysters even during the founding era. But now that we live in a spoil system democracy, it attracts the shysters.
It does.
Incentivizes them.
And we as capitalists need to win. But I sent you this. I don't even know if you had time to read it. Evidently, so John Stossel is talking about how he's failed. He's made the case for free markets for quite some time. And now, the socialists in this country are ascendant. So the rational animal, I'm going to read the whole thing if that's okay.
Yeah. And I think I saw that video, not that particular one, but I've seen Stossel's defense of capitalism, and rational animal nails it on the head. Go ahead.
Okay. Stossel and those like him keep losing to socialism for one reason: morality. They refuse to make the moral case, and you cannot beat a moral crusade with a spreadsheet. Why has John Stossel failed? He says it himself. Years spent proving free markets work and socialists keep winning. He blames bad economics, but economics was never the battlefield. Everything Stossel says is true. Capitalism produces, lifts men from poverty, delivers what government cannot, and none of it will win because the fight is not about production, it is about the good. This is the error conservatives and libertarians repeat forever. They argue efficiency while conceding morality. They prove capitalism works, then go silent when it's called selfish, having already granted the socialists' premise that to live for oneself is immoral. Capitalism has only one defense, that a man's life is his own, that he exists for his own sake, and his happiness is a right to proclaim, not a sin to excuse. Say it and you win, evade it and you lose to men with false economics and bolder claim to virtue. This is an article of faith.
That's great.
No, it's not. No,
Well, you didn't like his commentary?
No.
Oh, tell me why.
Because it's an article of faith that I hear repeated by objectivists constantly.
Okay.
You just have to make the moral argument. Okay. People have been arguing that man's life is his own since the 1600s. People have been arguing for individual rights for a very long time. Objectivists have been on the scene making moral arguments for over 50 years. And that's not getting it done either. Do I think moral arguments are more important? Sure. But this idea that the only reason that conservatives and John Stossel lose is because they're making economic arguments and not moral arguments? Okay. Well, then where is your evidence? Where is the evidence? Show me.
But Michael, it's worse than that, because the videos I've seen John Stossel do, he actually says that he makes it a vice. He's actually saying this vice actually works well. Greed is good, and and he doesn't make capitalism sound like a moral institution. He makes it sound like one
that's fine,
that is able to exploit the worst in human beings to make it nice for others.
Yeah, none of that has anything to do with my point. I'm not defending John Stossel. I'm going after this idea that I've heard repeated ad nauseum, that the thing to do is make the moral argument. If the moral argument's made, we win. They point and they say, look, the economic arguments have failed. We need to make the moral arguments. But the moral argument's been made as well. So has the economic argument. We lived through we didn't live through the century, but the 20th century was filled with intellectual giants. Ludwig von Mises, Ayn Rand, making arguments. Didn't get it done. The founding fathers didn't get it done. John Locke stated that people own themselves in their labor. That's 89 or 88 he wrote that. This idea that people haven't made the moral argument is just BS. It's not true. Do I think moral arguments are important? Yes, absolutely. More important than economic? Yes, I do. But saying, look, this is why these guys lose, bullshit.
Okay.
No,
I sort of disagree, but I see where you're coming from.
Well, then, if you don't just disagree, show me I'm wrong.
Because it seems to me what has dominance in the culture? What moral perspective has dominance in the culture? What are people taught in the overwhelming majority of films that they see, in the overwhelming majority of documentaries that they watch, the overwhelming majority of novels that they read? What ethics rises to the surface as the ideal? It's certainly not self-interest.
Okay. Mark, he says the reason that they are losing, John Stossel, libertarians, conservatives, is because they don't make the moral argument. Says, say it and you win. People have been saying it for quite some time.
People have also been saying it while also attempting to compromise with altruism at the same time. Many capitalists have tried to.
Ayn Rand?
No, not Ayn Rand. But
Atlas Shrugged was
people more popular than Ayn Rand, in the sense that Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell, these intellectuals, in my view, they influence the culture a little bit more than Ayn Rand does, and their perspective is an altruist perspective with how and why capitalism actually works, and how, for example, the dollar is a certificate of service to your fellow man. All true, but not necessarily the reason why capitalism works so well.
Oh my God!
So I know you're irritated, but
no, because I no, it's not what you just said.
What would you prefer?
That irritates me.
What do you think the formulation is that would be
Listen,
better?
What I would prefer is to not build up straw men to knock them down, to not make claims that don't have basis in reality, to say that libertarians and conservatives lose because they're not making the moral arguments, and evading the fact that Atlas Shrugged, one that was, according to some Library of Commerce Congress survey, influenced more people's lives than any other book other than the Bible. Rand's books have sold millions and millions and millions of copies. The moral argument has been made too. Right? It has been made. So now Ian Gilmore says this. He says, give examples of recent mainstream people like John Stossel that are saying it. Okay, that's fine, Ian, but that's not the thesis that I'm criticizing.
But I think they make a concession to Michael. It's either somebody said up there in the chat that they're trying to appeal to progressives, and do you think there's any merit to the fact that a libertarian-minded person is trying to, bring in somebody from the opposition side by relating to their ethics in essence?
You're mentioning something that I'm not saying. So, for instance, Gary Menard says the moral arguments made have never been accepted by the culture at large. Okay, that's my point. Do you think that laissez-faire economics has been accepted by the culture at large? No, they can make the same argument. Your utilitarian economists could make the same exact argument against moral arguments. They could say, look, you've been making this moral argument for a long time. You've been making this objectivist rights argument. You've been making the John Locke argument, the Murray Rothbard argument. Those are all moral arguments. Whether you agree with them or not isn't the point. The point is they are moral arguments. And they haven't got the job done either. I just think it's to sit back and say, if we would just make moral arguments, that's what the guy said.
I see your perspective.
Then we would win.
James Valiant says, Ayn Rand said that an argument can be foolproof, but no argument can be damned foolproof. It's not just us, but the cultural inertia, the psychological resistance. That's true.
Of course.
So I guess the what we have to do, Michael, is keep making the arguments, not only from morality, but also integrating them with practicality and showing why the moral is the practical and helping people come to the same conclusions that we came to over the years.
Yes. So Jim now says moral arguments face unique resistance. I agree. It's also beside the point. The guy said, and objectivists have said, it's moral arguments that need to be made. Right? So people, including me, speak in shorthand and oversimplify. I'm going to say this, though, Ian. I don't think you're going to find somebody more than I do that delves into a topic, if I want to understand it, that makes arguments with more depth, draws on more sources than what I do. And you're never going to hear me say something like that. Make the moral argument. That'll do it. And that's the only reason that libertarians lose, is because they aren't making the moral argument. That's a bad argument.
Well, that was a very stimulating discussion, Michael. Thank you. You've helped me to.
I agree with Ian Gilmore, by the way. Ian Gilmore says this. Ian Gilmore says, I would say it more like this. Economic only arguments will always fail. Integrated arguments are necessary, but not sufficient. I'm with you on that.
That's good. That's good. I like that formulation. That makes sense. So, Michael, is there a solution to continue to make the integrated argument, and eventually you have to hopefully win enough converts that influences the culture?
Listen, if I had the silver bullet, if I knew what was going to transform the culture, I would have done it a long time ago, right? I don't know. All I'm saying is that when somebody makes an argument like that, right, I could literally flip that, flip the terms, flip the sides where moral and economic, and make the same case. And I have evidence for both. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good argument. I want people on our side to be making strong, fact-based arguments that don't just sound good in the group that we're preaching to. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Anybody can sit around with their buddies in a circle jerk and, brilliant point. Who are you convincing? Are you just trying to get, I'm not trying to accuse him of any of this. I'm just saying, is the point just to get clicks and likes amongst your peer group or amongst your pals? Or is it actually to influence somebody, to persuade somebody?
Mm. Well, I think what we'll try to do is offer integrated arguments and turn people one at a time to our ideals. And over time, we hope there'll be enough to influence the culture. Right?
Yes. I got to find the answers for yesterday.
Oh, there were answers. People actually went and answered the question.
They went. Yeah.
Wait.
Here.
I was thinking about my question. Damn it. That was Monday.
Yeah,
by the way, folks,
question.
I watched pieces of 6 episodes of Vought Rising because I had to do ADR yesterday, and it looks good. I hope you guys actually watch the show. I don't know if you'll recognize me. I don't talk like me. I don't look like me. Really.
They said, I asked if this background's better than my old background, and the consensus is yes. But Robert Nasser said, just stop by, taking a break from my work with the audible reading of The Fruit of the Tree by Quent Cordair. Looks like I missed a good fight.
You did. Thank you, Robert, for joining us late. I'm about to do an Audible series myself next month. Let me know how that goes, Robert, because hopefully it's fun. Yeah, that's true, Paul. How many academic philosophers even consider objectivism worth studying? Not many. So did you get the answer to the question, or did I miss it?
I just said that the consensus was they liked the new one better.
Wait, what was the question?
If my blue background is better than the other background.
That was your freaking question yesterday?
Yes, because this became quite the hubbub on the show yesterday.
So, Michael, give us the capitalist thought of the day. We're 1 minute over time.
Yeah, I will kick you in your nuts, dude.
What?
Yeah, you're giving the capitalist thought of the day, and you're asking the question.
Okay, so speaking of which, I got kicked in the nuts on Monday. Anyway, yeah, so guys, we've been talking about the political science and how untrustworthy it is, and how COVID and the political response to COVID made pretty much the entire country suspect institutions. We don't trust the American government and the government institutions. It's sort of a staple of American politics to be that way. And in that respect, we're quite unusual in the world. But it's at an epidemic level today. And the reason for that is because the politics are involved in every aspect of our lives, and they should only be involved in one, and that is the protection of your rights and the protection of your property. In all other cases, they should leave you alone to solve your own problems. And that's precisely what a capitalist government would be, one that protects your rights and property, and otherwise leaves you alone. It protects you from the bad guys and lets you make your own decisions with respect to your own health, with respect to the way you invest your money, and with respect to what you do with your business. You would be in complete control of your sovereign being. And that's the way we think nature intended it to be. So remember, folks, go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org and look at the policies and become a member. If you think what I'm saying about capitalism makes sense to you, then be a part of that change. What, Michael?
Oh, I got to tell Paul Tech, I already debated Matt McManus a couple years ago. That's available on YouTube on the Rational Egoist channel. I debated him about Ayn Rand and Ludwig von Mises.
Very good. And so my question of the day is, should I get a webcam like Michael, or should I not? Please answer that on YouTube. What? Don't tilt the response, Michael. I want to get their honest response without you tilting it. Don't put your finger on the scale, man. Yeah. So go to YouTube.
Who's the scale man?
Be sure to go to YouTube and answer that question, folks. And remember to like and subscribe to this channel and to share it across your social media platforms, because these ideas need to get out there in the world. So now you got a little less than 23 hours to check your premises, folks. It's what all smart people do. Peace.